There was a long, forgotten road that ran through the woods, and it was said that those who traveled it would never return. But it was just a legend, a story told to scare children. At least that's what the people of the nearby town believe. One day, a group of teenagers decided to test the legend. They wanted to see if there was any truth to the tales of the forgotten road. They got in their cars and headed out into the woods, eager for adventure. As they drove down the winding road, they began to feel a sense of unease. The trees loomed over them, casting dark shadows across the road. The air grew colder, and they could hear strange whispers on the wind. But they pressed on, determined to see where the road would lead them. They drove deeper and deeper into the woods until they came to a bridge. It was an old, rickety thing, and it looked like it was about to collapse. The teenagers hesitated for a moment. One of them dared the others to cross the bridge. They drove across it, their hearts pounding in their chests. But then something strange happened. As they crossed the bridge, they began to feel as though they were being pulled into another dimension. The trees around them began to twist and distort, and the sky turned a sickly shade of green. They tried to turn back, but it was too late. They found themselves on a road that they didn't recognize. It was dark and desolate, with no signs of life anywhere. They tried to drive back the way they had come, but the road had disappeared. They were trapped. As they drove down the strange road, they began to see things that made their blood run cold. Strange creatures lurked in the shadows, their eyes glowing like a fluorescent light. They heard strange whispers on the wind, and they could feel a sense of dread building inside them. But then, they saw something that made them feel a glimmer of hope. They saw a figure standing in the distance, waving at them. It was a woman, and she looked familiar. The teenagers drove toward her, hoping that she could help them. But as they got closer, they realized that something was wrong. The woman's face was scarred and disfigured, her eyes glowing with an unworldly light. They tried to turn around, but it was too late. The woman grabbed them by the arms and pulled them out of the car. They tried to fight back, but she was too strong. As they struggled, they heard a voice, low and menacing. It said, "You should have never come here. You're mine now." The teenagers never returned home. Their families searched for them, but they were never found. The legend of the forgotten road lived on, more terrifying than ever before. Soon after, another group of teenagers drove down the forgotten road, and they saw something that ran a chill up their spine. They saw the abandoned cars of the previous group, and they realized that they had stumbled upon a trap. They tried to turn back, but it was too late. They were surrounded by the strange creatures that lurked in the shadows, and they heard the low, menacing voice once again. But then, something even stranger happened. The woman with the distorted face appeared before them, and she began to fight off the creatures. She seemed to be on their side. She told them that she had been trapped on the forgotten road for years, and that she had been waiting for someone to come along and help her. The teenagers listened to her story, and they realized that they had a chance to escape. They fought off the creatures with the help of the woman, and they managed to find a way out. But the woman was left behind. They drove back to the nearby town, shaken and traumatized by their experience, and the realization that the woman that had helped them escape was still a prisoner of the forgotten road. The teenagers did some research on the forgotten road, and they found out something that sent shivers down their spines. They discovered that the woman who had helped them was a victim of a horrible car accident that happened on that same road years ago. Her face had been badly disfigured in the accident, and she had been left for dead. But she had somehow survived, and she had been trapped on the forgotten road ever since. She had been luring in unsuspecting victims in the hopes of finding someone who could help her escape. The teenagers were horrified by what they had discovered. They realized that the legend of the Forgotten Road was true and that they had narrowly escaped a terrible fate. But they also realized that the woman who had helped them was not entirely evil. She had been trapped in a nightmare, just like they had been. The legend of the Forgotten Road lives on, a cautionary tale for those who dare to wander too far into the woods. And some say that on quiet nights, you can still hear the whispers of the lost souls who never made it back from the Forgotten Road. As the teenagers settled back into their normal lives, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. They were haunted by the memory of the woman on the Forgotten Road, and they felt as though they had been changed forever by their experience. They tried to move on, but strange things began to happen. The group started to experience vivid nightmares, all featuring the woman they had encountered on the Forgotten Road. They would wake up in the middle of the night, sweating and shaking, and they would hear strange whispers coming from the darkness. The whispers grew louder and more insistent until the group began to feel as though they were being watched. They would see strange shadows moving in the corners of their vision, and they would hear footsteps coming from empty rooms. The group tried to ignore it, but it became too much to bear. They decided to revisit the Forgotten Road, hoping to find some kind of closure. As they drove down the twisting, winding road, they felt as though they were being watched. The forest seemed to be alive with a strange energy, and they could hear strange whispers coming from the trees. As they approached the spot where they had first encountered the woman, they were shocked to see the woman was standing there, waiting for them. She was even more terrifying than they remembered. Her disfigured face twisted into a grotesque smile. She beckoned them towards her, and the group was powerless to resist. They approached her, trembling with fear, and she reached out to touch them. As her fingers brushed against their skin, the world around them began to warp and twist. They found themselves in a strange, otherworldly realm, surrounded by the lost souls of those who had died on the Forgotten Road. The woman was there with them, and she revealed the truth behind their nightmares. Their previous encounter with the woman had created an unbreakable bond, and they had unknowingly trespassed into a place where the veil between the living and the dead was thin. Only by helping the woman escape, they themselves could break the ever-looping curse of the Forgotten Road. The group was terrified, but they knew that they had no choice. They agreed to help the woman escape from the realm of the dead, and they again began a perilous journey through the darkness. As they moved through the realm, they encountered even greater horrors. They saw the ghosts of those who had died on the Forgotten Road, and they felt the cold grip of death closing in around them. But they pushed on, determined to escape the nightmare. And finally, after what felt like an eternity, they emerged into the light. The woman was there with them, and with uncontrollable emotion she thanked them for their help. The curse had been lifted. The woman continued her path, disappearing into the shadows, leaving the group shaken but happy to be alive and freed of the never-ending torture. As they drove away from the Forgotten Road, They knew that they would never be the same. They had seen things that no one was ever meant to see, and they had encountered a horror that was beyond human understanding. But they had also emerged victorious, and they knew that they would never forget the forgotten road. It would always be a part of them, a dark and terrifying memory that they would carry with them for the rest of their lives. But suddenly, as the group made their way back towards their town, the sky began to darken. They heard as the surrounding trees whispered, swayed, and twisted violently in the wind. It was only then that the group had realized they had unleashed the horror of the woman from the forgotten road upon their world.